winter time, but you have won us over. We have made more friends than we ever could have imagined here. And we're buying a home in McDonald and getting it remodeled. And I just want you to know that you are the reason, and Vicki loves you so much, and I can see why she misses you when she's gone. Men, the week after Labor Day, I'm going to be starting a men's group. It'll probably be a 6 to 8 week series. I'm still pulling some resources together. We'll probably meet twice a month at Denny's over on Belmont Avenue, have an average breakfast, and then a great time together. We'll be discussing men's issues during that time. And women, I know you're going to be talking about us women, aren't you? It's been 50 million years, and we still ain't figured you women out. So don't worry about it. We won't solve too many problems, but we hope you'll want to be part of that group, and we'll have a room set aside for us, and you'll be hearing more about that as we get closer. But your series of messages on neighboring, today we're going to talk about loving the lonely. It is probably what I would call the scarlet letter that people wear today. And if you don't watch for it, you miss it. Because we have a hard time connecting with people at deeper levels. We want to be casual. We want to be, hey, how's it going? We say, how you doing? They say, fine, but we don't really go, how you doing really? And around us, I guarantee you, somewhere in this church today, there is someone who amongst all the people here today, you are lonely even though you're surrounded by people. Because you see, being alone is a matter of geography. Being lonely is a matter of expectations. People who are lonely have failed expectations in relationships with other people. If you go to the workplace and you think, boy, I got a new job, it's going to be great, I'm going to make all kinds of friends. You go in there and you go in the first day and your boss is a jerk and nobody likes you, failed expectations, I guarantee you're going to be very lonely very quick. And we're going to talk about loneliness today because it is something that people wear, and we can become more aware of it, and there's something that we can do about it, especially in this church community. And we're going to be reading a passage very shortly. It's one of the miracles Jesus did in Matthew. He healed a leper. And a leper, back then, leprosy was an awful disease. It was a thing where your body just basically rotted apart. It was disfiguring. Your face would be disfigured. It would look like another type of animal face, and your limbs would eventually rot. And you could touch something, and literally one of your fingers might just fall right off into a bowl of soup. Just an awful disease. And there's a gentleman in the store today that has leprosy. And when you got leprosy back then, they didn't send you to the hospital. But the only thing they knew to do was to isolate you. They figured it was very contagious. So since it was contagious and they didn't have antibiotics, no hospital care facilities, what they would do is if you were diagnosed with leprosy, you'd go to your church. Your priest was kind of like your doctor too. Your priest would look over, yeah, you got leprosy. As soon as you were diagnosed with that, you were taken away from your family because you didn't want to spread it to them. So you were taken out of your home. Your work was done because no one would do business with you. You were no longer welcome in any church of their day. And you were basically taken away and isolated to the outside of the community somewhere. Now, if you were in a big enough city, sometimes the lepers would get together in a community. And the rule was you were not allowed to be touched. Can you imagine never being touched? In fact, if someone came close to you, you'd go, unclean, unclean. You would have to let them know that you had leprosy to warn them not to touch you. In our story today, we're going to see where Jesus heals a man of leprosy. Yet, I want you to notice the second miracle. I believe Jesus does two miracles. He heals a man of leprosy, but at the end of this passage, and I'll give you I hate to give you the climax of the story now, but I'll give it to you now. At the end of it, he tells the gentleman, he says, go back to your priest, let him diagnose you as clean, and he will reintroduce you back to the community. You will now be allowed to be touched. You can go back to your family. You can go back to your work. You can go back to your church community. And Jesus does two miracles here. And I wonder to this gentleman which was truly the greater miracle. And this beautiful story is found in Matthew chapter 8. And it reads, "When Jesus had come down from the mountains, great crowds followed him. And there was a leper who came to him and knelt before him, saying, 'Lord, if you choose, you can make me clean.' He, being Jesus, stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, 'I do choose, be made clean.' Immediately his leprosy was cleansed. Then Jesus said to him," the second miracle, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded as a testimony to them." May God have the blessing to the reading of his word. Today we're going to talk about loneliness. And you see, loneliness, it is different than being lonely. Lonely is about whether I'm alone here on the stage, but I don't feel lonely. Why I don't feel lonely? Because I had expectations of the group that when I came in today, that you would laugh at my jokes that maybe weren't too funny, and that when I made fun of Vicky, you would enjoy that. And since you have met my expectations, I don't feel lonely, but yet I'm alone up here. But there are people in your group today who feel lonely because they have expectations of the group. And they came in today and they said, maybe this is the one place where I can come where someone will listen to me, where they will touch me, where they'll spend time with me. And when that doesn't happen, they leave as lonely as they came in. So the person you make eye contact with today, what if they are that lonely person that needs to be loved? Sociologists have shown in our culture today there are four main reasons why we have what we call a relationship, they call it a relationship poverty, a relational poverty in our society. A society of millions of people, thousands of people in this city, hundreds of people in this church, yet there is a poverty of relationships. And they say one reason for this, the one cause is that there is a breakup of relationships, a breakdown of family that has happened in our culture. It's just the way things are. I think young people are smarter than I am. Because in my day, when my parents and I got married, it was like, you get married, you stay married with that person forever, no matter how bad it is and how awful it is, because you commit your life to that person, and if you're miserable, stay in it because you should be married to them. I'm not saying this about Vicky, this ain't about us. But younger people today, I think you say, you know what? There are expectations that we had in this marriage, and if you don't live up to this covenant, I'm not staying in it. And sometimes a breakup of a relationship is an awful, lonely time. I mean, the breakup is bad enough. I had a friend say once to me, he said, when I got divorced, it was like going to my wife's funeral because the relationship was over. It's like she was dead, but the next week I saw her at Walmart, and the pain opened up all over again. He said, it was a lonely time. He said, the kids favored her, one of them favored me. He said all of a sudden the family was broken up, and he said it was a very lonely time for us because all the expectations we had in our marriage, it didn't work out, and we broke up, and he said, I felt very lonely. But yes, sociologists say that it also goes beyond that. You see, when there's a breakup in a relationship, first of all, who wins the friends? If you're together with someone today and you break up, and this could be if you're in high school and you break up with a friend and you have friends, all of a sudden, who wins the friends? Or if you're a couple and you're together and you used to go into your friend's house and you sit around the fire pit and you have a beer and you have a good time and you're talking and you break up, are you going to go back to your friends together? No, probably not. And the problem is, one of the two of you is probably going to win the friends and one is not. And they say, that is isolation. That is loneliness. And then what happens? What happens if you go to iFire together? your boyfriend, girlfriend, you break up, you don't want to see each other there. Or if you're married and you're going through marital difficulties and you break up your marriage, all of a sudden it's like, do you want to sit over here and your ex-spouse sit over there and scowl at each other during the whole service? In one church I pastored, this was the weirdest thing. They got divorced, and a woman, where she came to me from a divorce, and she said, Pastor, can you help me? Every church I go to, my ex-husband will find out where I'm at, and he will follow me into a church, and he will sit right behind me and just stare at me. Because he wants her to be lonely in a group. He doesn't want her to connect with another group and go on with her life. He wanted her to be as miserable as he was. And she didn't know what to do about it. So what happens when you break up? Wouldn't it be awful just to lose this community and have to walk away from it? And sociologists say that breakup of relationships, it's difficult at many levels. They say the second reason for it is, and some of these you're going to go, huh? Excuse me. They say the second reason for so much loneliness is our increased mobility. Now, when I say increased mobility, that doesn't mean beating the GPS by 3 minutes to get somewhere. Vicki is very good at that. I'll say, honey, what time are we going to be there? Beep, 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 beep. It says we will be there at 4:37. We will be there at 4:25. So I, being her good, faithful, loving, supportive husband, every time she goes around a corner, I make the sound effect of like a race car. I'm bruised all over my left shoulder. That is not what we're talking about, increased mobility. If you have parents and grandparents, which most of us probably do, we were born sometime or other, but whoever cared for you growing up, older people, I have aunts and uncles and grandparents. They lived in the same house for almost 50 years. You go, how long have you lived here? Oh, 285 years. Do you have grandparents that have lived in the same house for probably 50 years? Raise your hand. Oh, yeah. Back then, it's just the way culture was. People settled in. They worked at the same plant for 40, 50 years. They retired. They knew all their neighbors. They had sidewalks. They visited. Oh, yeah, Bob lives here, and Bobby lives here, and Robert lives here, and Tom and Tommy and Thomas live here, and Susie and Susan, and they all live here. And everybody knew their neighbors, and they all knew their names, and they hung out together. And today, that has really changed. Today, our work moves us more often. I'm a Methodist, believe me, I know that. The bishop can call me up tomorrow and say, Ken, you're moving. And hopefully Vicki gets to go with me. They say, Ken, and I'd be expected to go. And at workplaces, we see that a lot more. Sometimes the workplace isn't as loyal to us as we wish they would be. And our jobs change, and we get relocated, and we go here and there. And every 2, 3, 4 years, sometimes once a year, I know people who move twice in 1 year. We are much more mobile. And how difficult that is to have friendships when you're so mobile. I mean, how much time are you going to invest in a relationship when you know a year or two later you're probably going to be moved again? Probably not going to happen. And they say this increased mobility has really caused so much loneliness because we don't want to invest in those relationships. As a Methodist pastor, I have friends who are Methodist pastors who will not develop friendships with their parishioners because they say, well, I know that I'm expendable. I know that in 4, 5, or 10 years, I'll probably get the call and I'll get moved, and I don't want to go through the pain of losing these friends. So I'll be their pastor, and they'll be my parishioner. It'll be a professional thing, and I'll be the hired professional. I'll go to the hospital and visit them, but I'm really not going to let them in my life because I don't want to lose those friendships once I get them. And you can kind of understand that. Vic and I have chosen the other route. We want friends. And we want to hang out with people, and we want to have parties, and we want to have a good time, and we want to develop those relationships, and if we lose it, we lose it. But you know what? You guys are worth it. And we want friendships. And that's why we're staying here, because you guys are great. And you know what? It's worth the risk for us. But we are much mobile. And you may have been relocated and changed your jobs recently and moved because of different reasons, and you can understand what I mean by that feeling of isolation and loneliness when that happens. The third reason they say, and this, you're not going to like this one, so hang on. Social media. Oh, you older people, you don't like social media because I am older than, wow, all of you. Wow. Well, most of you. And it's not that I like social media, but they say, it's just been proven, they say social media many times substitutes for deeper friendships. I actually had a person come to me a couple weeks ago, and she was very upset. She said, Pastor Ken, are you mad at me? I said, no. Why would I be mad at you? Well, you didn't friend me on Facebook. And I said, well, I have about 4 friends on Facebook. Besides, to be honest with you, all she puts on there are recipes. Get over it. I don't care what you eat for dinner. Every time I get there, oh, I had this lasagna, I had this, So I just never friended her. I knew what she put on. She said, are you mad at me because I didn't friend you? I said, no, I'm not mad at you. And she said, well, you didn't friend me on Facebook. Now, being the good pastor, I said, let me get out my phone. I will friend you. How do you do that again? Okay. And I did it, and I went into my Facebook, and there's a thing up here you do, and you push a button, and I friended her. You know what the real me was thinking down inside? Oh, yeah, I'm not your friend. That's why I was at the hospital when you had surgery and sat with your dysfunctional family all day long. That's why I came there 2 days later. That's why I was at the care facility when you went to your rehab. That's why every week when I see you Bible study, I hug you, I care about you, I talk with you. No, I'm not your friend because I didn't face you on this little stupid phone. But they say social media many times, and not saying all the time, but it does happen, doesn't it? I have 855,000 acquaintances. Friends on Facebook. But don't let it substitute for those deeper friendships. Because you may have all your friends here, but Vicki said the next person you make eye contact with, that is so important. And I hate to say it, but you don't get that on Facebook. You don't get the face-to-face confrontation. You don't get the innuendos. You don't get the body language. You don't get the inflection of the voice. You don't know what is really in my heart by just a text. You're going to start knowing my heart when you watch me and we talk and we converse and we spend time together. But social media, it can and it does lead to loneliness. They say the 4th thing that leads to loneliness is heavy workload. Now, in my day growing up, this is just the way it was. It didn't make it right or wrong. My dad worked. My mom stayed at home. Dad made the money. Mom spent the money. She raised the kids. Dad was home most nights, unless he's out running around somewhere, but typically he should be home on weekends. And one person worked in the family, and we made it. We had a lot of bill collectors at the door, but we made it. We scraped by. And I'll tell you what, I don't know how you young people do it today. I'll tell you what, if Vicki and I didn't both work full time, we wouldn't be buying a home right now. We couldn't afford it on one income. We just couldn't. And then we have to take our schedules and say, okay, Vicki, let's see, we need to spend time together. How about Wednesday? And I got a meeting Wednesday, Thursday. Okay, Friday, 4 o'clock, we'll go out to dinner, spend some time together. And we have to literally map out on our phones our time together because of the heavy workload. Now, I can't imagine what you're going through when you're working 2 jobs each with your family and you're trying to stay connected. I don't know how you develop that close relationship. And they say that heavy workload, it causes people to feel very lonely because they're not able to connect with one another, and they're not able to connect with people at work. They can't hang out with people. They don't have time just to relax and sit around the fire pit. They don't have that time anymore because of heavy workload. And you might be there, and you say, man, I understand what you mean. I'm surrounded by people all day long, but I'm very lonely because you don't develop those friendships that you used to develop. So what do we do with this? How do you as iFire, how do we love the lonely? How do we become aware of it? And are there things we can do about it, or is it the pastor's job? When you're lonely, come to the pastor's office. Now, I think it's something that we can all do. And they say there are 3 things that we can do that can really help the lonely reconnect. and to take away that isolation. And they say, first of all, is we need to learn. In fact, Shane teased me earlier about, Pastor Kenny wants all the hugs and out the door and stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I like to touch people in healthy ways. I like to touch people. I like to hug people. I like to shake their hand. I like to touch them on the shoulder because they say love with touch is so important in taking away loneliness. Touching is so important to us. Notice what Jesus did with the leper. He reached out and he touched this unclean leper that he should not have touched and touched him. And I believe there is much healing in just that touch alone. There is a need for us to be touched. There are people that just need to know that you care about them enough to touch them. I can't, you got to go with me to the hospital sometimes and visit people when they're in the hospital. And I mean, they're there, they've been poked, prodded, and probed. They've had every medical device put on them. I got the synthetic gloves, make sure they're not latex if you're allergic to it. And everybody's touching you medically, and they're sticking things down your throat and up other areas and in you and around you. And I'll go into their room and I'll talk with them. And I'll say, can I pray with you? Invariably, they'll reach out their hand and say, yes, will you pray with me? Now, what are they saying? I'm saying, I want to pray with you. What are they saying? They're saying, Pastor, will you touch me? Will you touch me in a way that's not medical? Will you touch me without the polyester gloves? Will you touch me in a way that's not poking, prodding, or probing me? Will you touch me in a caring way? And they will invariably reach out their hand for me to hold their hand when I pray for them. Vicki, a while back, she visited someone in the hospital, and when she held the woman's hand, the woman went, that feels good. The need for touch. The need for touch is so strong. I mean, we were in our mother's womb. We were touched with warmth. We're surrounded by warm hugs and embraces when we're children. And then we become adults and go, don't touch me. Now, hear this. There are people around you who do not want to be touched. Maybe they're abused. Maybe they got things going on. And they will give you hints if they don't want to be touched. If you go to hug someone and they go, that's a hint. Or if they go, no, don't touch, that's a hint. Or if you go to hug them and they go, that's a hint. Go pat them on the shoulder, shake their hand. But most people are pretty good about being touched in healthy ways. There is a healing in being touched. And we need to learn to connect with one another. I have a gentleman in my church, I've been watching him, because people say, I'll make up a name, Bob. They say, Bob is such a warm and caring guy. You know how guys are always stoic, we're real strong. And they say, Bob is so warm and caring. And he's a strong, muscular guy, real hard-working guy. And I said, he's warm and caring. And I started watching him, and he's one of our greeters. And when people come in the door, he takes them by the hand and takes them by the elbow. Man, it's so great to have you here today. And when he gets to know you, he gives you a nice warm hug. Every Sunday, he gives me a big old hug. He says, Pastor Ken, it's so great to see you today. And when he comes up to you in a crowd and he walks up beside you, he'll put his hand on your back and say, man, it's just wonderful. He touches people. And that connects with being warm and caring. And I've learned from him. I watch him, and I've realized the importance of just reaching out and touching people. It is such a need. Just going to blow you away. You aren't going to believe this, okay? But believe it, it's true. We have such a need for touch that when people are lonely, if people do not touch them, they will take more hot showers and baths than most people because they want to be surrounded with warmth. Now, doesn't that blow you away? If you're taking 8 hot showers, not cold ones, if you're taking 8 hot showers, baths a day, there's a good chance you're lonely and you just want to be surrounded. Have you ever gone in the shower and just went, oh, there's such a pleasure in just being touched, surrounded by warmth. We have that need that we will, if we don't get that need in touch from other people, we will find a way to get it. That is how strong that need is. You know what? This is a great place to practice. If someone goes, stay away from them. Otherwise, it's okay to practice. If they don't want to be touched, be free to let each other know that, but begin to touch one and care for one another that way. Show warmth. Someone here today may have not been touched all week long. No one has contacted them at all. And this may be the one place where you can love the lonely by touching them. The second way we can love the lonely is just by listening. You're going, listening? I could do that. In fact, I'll give you a master's degree in counseling right now. There are 2 words that you need to learn in listening. And if you do this, you should be a licensed practical counselor. This is what they teach you at school. The 2 magic words. When someone comes to you and you sense that they are isolated or lonely, and you can see it when you lock eyes, can't you? You can tell there's something wrong. You sense they're lonely, they're upset, something's going on. And there are 2 magic words that I use, and it's a secret. Don't let anybody else know this. Hear the words. What happened? There, you have a master's degree in counseling. Then just sit back and listen. They're upset, they're lonely. What happened? Even if it's not something that happened, if it's just a state they're in, they will tell you, I've really had a tough time, and they'll begin to talk to you, and all you have to do is listen and go, yep. But listen, really listen. Listening is a skill, but it's a skill that shows people that you care. Don't tell them what you think, don't give your opinion. Sometimes just listen and ask questions. Jesus was masterful at asking questions. So what do you think about this? So do you want to be healed? He would ask some questions. Well, what do you think about this? What have you heard before? Jesus asked a lot of questions. But taking the opportunity just to listen to people is crucial. But when you make that eye contact and you see it in their body language, and you see they're in despair, they're stressed in how they stand, and the lack of eye contact, and how they hold their body and their voice, and you can see the signs there. Take the time. Pull them to the side. How you doing? And don't settle for fine, because they're lying to you. Say, how you doing? Really, how are you doing? And listen. You may be the only person who's taken time this week to listen to them. And there's something cathartic about being listened to, because it lets them know that you care. I've done many memorial services, and one family I ministered to, the husband had committed suicide in an awful way, and when one of our neighbor ladies, wasn't even at our church, and I went down for the day and just sat at her home, and I just sat and just listened, and I just cry with her and listen to her, and then I'd just be about ready to leave, and the next daughter would come in, and I'd stay a little bit longer, and then the son came in, I stayed. I was there all afternoon. I don't think I said 3 words all day long, except, I'm just so sorry. I'm just so sorry. I'm so sorry. And when I left, I got up, we circled together, and I made them hold hands. We touched. I let them know that I cared, and I prayed with them, and I left. And at the funeral home 2 days later, she said, Pastor Ken, thank you for your wisdom and kind words. I was like, I didn't say anything. But get it, I did, didn't I? I said it just because I was willing to listen. In my listening, she heard kindness and love and wisdom somewhere in me, just being willing to listen to what's going on in her life. So this is a great place to also practice. Just listen to one another. Take the time to pull each other aside and say, so tell me, what happened? Give them an opportunity to share. Take away that loneliness in their life. The third way I think we can help each other in loving each other when we're lonely is we love each other just with the greatest gift you can give, and that's your time. Love with time. So one thing you have that isn't going to take money out of your wallet, and that's your time, but it is so valuable. Just taking the time to be with someone who's lonely. I have a lady, and I connect people with my church, but I have a lady in my church. Every Sunday morning, she goes to this woman's home, and she picks her up for church. Now, this isn't just go pick her up for church. This woman has a very difficult time getting around physically, and it will literally take her up to 15 minutes just to get out of her chair and get into the car, and she'll put a little box by the door of her car, and she has to step up in it, and she's had such a hard time getting around. And it takes her 15 minutes to get to the car. She brings her to church, drops her off at the front door. The greeters get her inside, gets her to a power chair. After church, guess what? She takes her home. Takes another 15 minutes to get her home, unless she goes to the restaurant and takes her in for lunch. Then on Wednesday night, guess what? The woman sings in choir. Here she goes. Picks her up for choir, waits a 15 minutes, picks her up, brings her into choir, takes her home, spends the other 15 minutes. It has cost her time and time and time. But I'll tell you what, on Sunday morning, when you see this lady buzzing around in her power chair and she does terrible in reverse, stay out of her blind spot, when she's zipping around in her power chair, she is the most unlonely person I know. She's just smiling. She just loves being there. People hug her. She smiles. She says hi, comes up with Pastor Ken. You know why I don't think she's lonely? Because someone has taken the time to show her how much they love her. Spend the time. Who do you need to spend time with? Who do you need to take to lunch or go to coffee with or just spend that extra few moments with each week to take away their feeling of loneliness? That time is so, here's how important that time is. I love science. I think it's great. Scientists have shown that lonely people shop more than unlonely people. So if you shop all the time, there's a good chance, maybe not, but Vicki likes to shop. She just likes to shop. But if you like to shop, they say when people lack relationships, they will fill that with possessions. Because if you have no one spending the time with you in relationship, you still have that need to connect somewhere, so they'll connect, and they'll connect it with shopping and getting things all the time. That is how important it is, relationships. Folks, we are the most relational animal on the planet. We have the ability to connect deeper than any other creature on this planet. God has created us with relationship, with a desire for relationship, with a desire to be touched, with a desire to be listened to, with a desire to have people to spend time with, a desire to have such deep, meaningful, lifelong relationships. And this is the place where it needs to happen. This is where it needs to happen first. We follow the model of Christ. We say, you know what? You may be lonely the rest of the week, but when you are here, we are family. And we're going to connect. And we're going to connect with others. And the world is, once someone asked one of the leaders in the church in one of the letters, they said, how will people know that we're Christians? And I think it's Paul. He said, they'll know we're Christians by how we love one another. Wow. You know what? If we can learn to love one another and take away that loneliness and really connect with one another at deep levels, the world will know we are Jesus' disciples. And that's our challenge. So let's learn to listen. Let's watch. Let's connect. And let's be children of God who are willing to touch others and do miracles in their life by taking away loneliness. It's a gift that we can all offer. Because there are many here today who wear that scarlet letter of loneliness. We're aware of it, and we can do something about it. Let us pray. Lord, thank you for making us relational beings. You have given us the ability to have a relationship with you. You've given us the ability to desire within every fiber of our being to have relationships with one another. So Lord, help us to open our eyes. Help us to be aware, to look, to touch, and to care, and to love the lonely. For the glory of your name. Amen.
100 miles an hour in the wrong direction. She is trying, but the canyon's ever widening in the depths of her cold heart. So she sets out on another misadventure just to find she's another 2 years older and she's 3 more steps behind. Does anybody hear her? Anybody see? Or does anybody even know she's going down today? Under the shadow of our steeple, with all the lost and lonely people, searching for the hope that's tucked away in you and me. Does anybody hear her? Can anybody see? She is yearning for shelter and affection that she never found at home. And she is searching for a hero to ride in and save the day. And in walks her Prince Charming, and he knows just what to say. A momentary lapse of reason as she gives herself away. Does anybody hear her? Can anybody see? Or does anybody even know she's going down today? Under the shadow of our steeple, with all the lost and lonely people, searching for the hope that's tucked away in you and me. Does anybody hear her? Can anybody see? If judgment looms under every steeple, if lofty glances from lofty people who can't see past her scarlet letter, and we never even met her. If judgment looms under every steeple, if lofty glances from lofty people who can't see past her scarlet letter, and we never even met her. No, we never even met her. Yeah. Does anybody hear her? Can anybody see? Does anybody even know she's going down today? Under the shadow of our steeple, with all the lost and lonely people, searching for the hope that's tucked away in you and me. Does anybody hear her? Can anybody see? Yeah. Does anybody even know she's going down today? Under the shadow of our steeple, with all the lost and lonely people, searching for the hope that's tucked away in you and me. Does anybody hear her? Can anybody see? If you want to be part of our final blessing, please stand up. Stand up and lift your hand to the Lord. We've been talking about being neighbors, the poor, the orphan. Today we talk about the lonely. And the one thread that runs throughout all of that is that the way you fix those things, the way you address those things, is by being Jesus to someone else. It sounds simple, but it's really hard. But it is an easy solution. Just be Jesus to somebody else. Go out there and do that this week. Amen.